every side but one. It was just jamming there. So Marsh and I are in there, just sitting there, talking or whatever, and here comes Wally in the library. Wally never came in the library, and Wally says, "Men, I want you to do me a favor." "Well, what's that, Wally?" "Man, we'll do it." He says, "Pat Buchanan is having a rally at the Capitol tomorrow, and he wanted me to get some people together to come to his political rally." And so Marsh and I kind of look at each other. For those of you who don't know, Pat Buchanan was like one of the popularizers, one of the first evangelical politicians. And so Marsh and I kind of look at each other, and I look at Wally and go, "Wally, you know, I've never been to any political rally, and I can't see myself starting with Pat Buchanan." Wally doesn't say anything. He says, "Well, all right." Walks out and leaves. So Marsh and I are sitting there kind of feeling bad about it, but still, I mean, Pat Buchanan. So the next morning, I'm sitting in my office, and here comes a runner. It wasn't Johnson. Johnson was a runner at the time. Johnson was jumping somewhere else for Doris. Just a little aside here. Johnson was scared to death of Doris. Doris was Wally's. Doris was Wally's secretary. She was the office manager. She ran the runners. She did everything. And Johnson was Doris's dog. He did whatever Doris said and followed her around, waiting for her to tell him something else to do. But it wasn't Johnson. There was another runner. The runner says, "Doris told me to bring you this." It was this nice, one of those fold-up cardboard deals. And I said, "What's Doris?" Opened up, it's tissue paper, and it's this shirt. And I'm thinking, it's a beautiful shirt. Beautiful. I remember it was a Kenneth Gordon shirt. Beautiful shirt. I'm thinking, why is Doris giving me a shirt? I'm thinking, then I realized what had happened, and I go, oh, shit. So I think about it for a minute, and I call Doris. I say, "Doris, what time is that rally this morning?" "What time is that Pat Buchanan rally?" She says, 11 o'clock. Okay. So 10:30, I go in, I put the shirt on, and I go to the rally at the Capitol. It's in the rotunda, and everybody's standing around. I'm kind of, I don't want anybody to see me, but at the same time, I'm trying to make sure that Wally sees me. So I'm looking around for Wally, and then the thing starts, and everybody straightens up and looks at Pat Buchanan, who's all made up, and so it was kind of a horseshoe situation. And I'm looking for Wally, and then boom, right across the horseshoe from me, Dick Marshall. Wearing the same shirt. And we laughed I remember making eye contact with Marshall, and we just laughed our asses off. Right there in the middle, we just laughed our asses off. And, I'm still looking for Wally. Never did see Wally, and it just occurred to me while I was remembering this a few months ago that I'd be willing to bet Wally wasn't even there. His politics were no more Pat Buchanan's than ours were. But I'd be willing to bet that Wally was not there. But there was Marshall in that same shirt, and this is the shirt. And I did a little of course, it's the highest possible quality. I remember looking at that and thinking, boy, this sure is soft. Because I looked at it this morning, and it says, Retford Cotton, Kenneth Gordon, New Orleans. I'm going, Retford Cotton, what is that? So I Googled it this morning, and Retford apparently is a town in the north of England, but apparently it's a kind of weave. There's an article on history of thrift shop history. Some thrift shop guy was raving about finding pretty much this shirt. It was talking about the weave and how great it was. Well, and I remember seeing that shirt and saying, man, because where I was from, I think this is the first 100% cotton shirt I've ever owned. Because where I'm from, it was all permapress, which means 65% polyester, 25% cotton. You didn't have to iron it. So this was my first nice shirt. So that was, I mean, Wally was a leader, but he was he was a lot more complex than you thought he was. He was a pretty sophisticated and been able to get what he wanted. And he got Marshall out to go to that rally. And the other thing I remember about Wally was, well, he always wore nice clothes, but he had that buckskin jacket. Do y'all remember that jacket? It was a tan jacket with that kind of that fringe on it, that white fringe on it. And it was a buckskin kind of beautiful jacket. And I was walking down the street one day, and I saw a homeless person who had that exact same jacket on. And I'm thinking, God damn, I can't wait to give Wally shit about this. So I see next time I go, hey, Wally, I saw some homeless guy with a coat, with your exact coat on. I said, man, those things must be cheap. And he just turns real red in the face. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's embarrassed about his coat. And he just kind of mumbles something and leaves which was not like him. And then I realized he had given that homeless person his jacket. He had given him his jacket. And that was Wally. He was generous almost to a fault. I mean, he just literally, I mean, you hear this expression, give you your shirt off your back. Well, that was Wally. Literally, he gave that homeless person the coat off his back. And didn't say anything about it, was embarrassed to even talk about it. And that was Wally. That's how generous Wally was. Wally was one of the great people you'll ever meet. And then there's Frank. Frank, I still don't understand Frank to this day. Frank is one of the weirdest, of all the successful people I've met through Scott Douglas and at Scott Douglas, Frank was the strangest. And it's hard for me to really summarize Frank and get a grip on him, but one thing about Frank was he loved being a lawyer. He loved every part of it. He loved advocating. He loved the facts. Mostly he loved the facts. He couldn't get enough of the facts. He loved negotiating. He loved every part of it. And he loved making money. He loved everything about money. He loved to talk about money. He loved to make it. But really what he most liked about it was giving it away. He loved to give money away. He loved to make you money and announce all the money he'd made for you. And while Frank made everybody money that ever worked with him, he made you money. It was that simple. He made everybody knows that. Frank made you money. And I remember Frank at the beginning would come around and distribute all the lawyers' paychecks himself. He'd have a big handful of checks. And he'd come in your office and he'd get it out and he'd go look at it. And first I'm thinking he was looking at the name to make sure that he had your name right, but he wasn't. He was looking at the amount. He wanted to see what you were making. So he'd come in and he'd get that, he'd go, then he'd get that, he'd go, the eagle flies. And to me, I'm hearing that, and to me, that was a blues lyric from a Bobby Blue Bland song, Blue Monday. No, Stormy Monday. They call it Stormy Monday, but Tuesday's just as bad, Wednesday's worse, Thursday's oh so sad. The eagle flies on Friday, and Saturday I go out to play, and Sunday I go to church, and I kneel down and I pray. And Lord have mercy. So I'm thinking, wow, Frank's a blues man. So how does Frank know a Bobby Blue Bland song? As it turned out, it wasn't even a Bobby Blue Bland song. McConnico taught me that that's a T-Bone Walker song originally. But I thought it was Bobby Blue Bland, and I'm sitting there saying, God damn, man, what? Frank, who'd have thought this? Frank, a blues man. So the months go on it, every month, the eagle flies. and it finally got to where every time he do it, I just laugh uproariously. He said, all right, Frank, thanks. What? And finally he says, what's so funny? I said, well, why, Frank, I just didn't have you spotted as somebody who knew about blues songs. And he looks at me with this puzzled look on his face. He said, so what do you mean? I said, the blues song. That's the lyric from Stormy Monday by Bobby Blue Bland. He looks at me and he says, no, he says, I don't know about that. He says, That's just what you say on payday because the eagle's on the dollar bill. Which I had no idea that. Did y'all know that? No. So that's the eagle flies. He was just, there's the money. So, and that's when I realized that Frank and I were on the same page. We were just in different books. And the other thing, I remember Frank, when you first started as an associate, I didn't realize this, but I'm sitting in my first day as an associate. Here comes Frank in my office, and he hands me this, and he says, I get all our new associates a briefcase, and here's your briefcase. And this is the briefcase right here. And I remember looking at it and go, wow, that's all leather. And I had never owned anything leather before. And it was like, I'm looking at it and I said, man, look at that. The only thing that's not leather is the zipper and the stitching. This is really nice. Because once again, where I came from, you had vinyl and naugahyde. You didn't have leather. So that was really a nice thing for Frank to do. It was really, I got nice things as a kid, mostly toys. My mother had the good sense to get me good toys. But this was one of the first nice things I ever had. And that was Frank. Frank was generous, as Wally was generous, and Frank was a complex guy. Just one more thing. I remember when I first saw Frank, I was clerk of the Supreme Court, and he had a case where he was I think he was the petition. I think he was the respondent. I think he'd actually won in the trial court, and his position was, to me, the most ridiculous position I'd ever heard in a case. His position in a railroad commission case, the issue was, what does contiguous tracks mean? What does it mean for tracks to be contiguous? And his position was, they couldn't be consecutive. They had to all be touching each other. So his position was, they had to be like a circle. You divide a circle in three and every track's touching the other one. And the Railroad Commission's position was, no way, they can be consecutive. You take a rectangle and divide the rectangle into three and those tracks are consecutive. Well, that's gotta be right. Especially when the Railroad Commission says it's right. And I think that that Frank had won that case in the trial court and in the Court of Appeals. And I was thinking, how did he win this case? And I remember him getting up there, and here he comes, and he's just, this big guy lumbers up there, bald head, those little wire rimmed glasses. And the first thing he says, what do you call the justices? Whatever. He says, justices, he says, I've argued a lot of cases, and I've had some cases where the facts are on my side and some cases where the law's on my side. Well, this is one of those cases where both the facts and the law are on my side. And I'm sitting there going, who is he kidding? So what kind of confidence game is this guy running? But that was Frank. He would take a position, and boy, he would go for it. He'd be as totally convincing as he could possibly be. He was such a great lawyer, right? And he loved it. Loved everything about it, and always appreciated him for that. And then there's McConnico, who's still here, still alive.
What a tribute!
Thank you for your comments, Steve. In the 80s, McConnico's two sons were the same ages as my two stepsons at the time. So we used to go out in the fields and throw the football around and let our kids play together. So one weekend he said, and we used to listen to music together a lot. And back then it was all records and vinyl. So we exchanged records and exchanged cassette tapes and listened to blues and country music. And McConnico introduced me to Webb Pierce and to I can't remember her name now. Hazel Dickens. Well, Hazel Dickens is like the leader of female mountain bluegrass. She was the first one to do it as a woman, to the point where just a couple of weeks ago I saw a Hazel Dickens tribute at Central Market. It was pretty amazing. The woman didn't do it well, but it was a good idea. She couldn't sing. And of course,
Nothing shittier than a poorly executed Hazel Dickens.
and then there was Webb Pierce, who was the white trash king of hillbilly, and so that's the kind of things that we're listening to. So he says, why don't we go out to the country, to my place in Waco? The kids can run around. We'll sit outside, listen to music, and drink beer. And I said, okay. So we go up there, and we used to make these cassette mixes, and we're listening to cassette mixes. And that was right at the beginning of the compact disc era. People buying compact disc, and everybody's saying, what do you think? Are they good? So I turn to McConnico and I say, Steve, you got any CDs? And he long pause. He says, yeah. I said, well, what the fuck? I said, well, how many you got? So, another long pause. I said, why didn't you just fucking tell me? And he says, I got a few. I said, well, come on, what do you got? He says, well, I got a couple at First City. I got one at Frost. And that's when I knew that McConnico and I were on the same road. We were just going in a different direction. And then, I probably shouldn't tell this story because I told him I wouldn't.
Great story.
But it was so long ago that it doesn't matter.
That's right.
So, yeah. So, the only time, way back in the early history of the firm, they used to distribute every penny we made. It'd come for distribution day, and they would empty the bank accounts. Well, there was 1 month where we came up short on payroll. We just didn't have money to cover payroll, so they made a cash call. And this is right. It was a horrible time for me because I just become partner, so I was in the hole. I just bought a house, so I was dealing with that. I didn't have any money, so they make a cash call. The firm made a cash call. Imagine. They make a cash call, and I don't have the money. It's $5,000. I don't have the money. Oh, shit, what am I going to do? And some kind of brute note written, McConnico kind of notices I'm not my normal chipper self and pulls out of me that I didn't have the money for the cash call. And he says, I'll tell you what, he says, I'll lend you the money, you just don't tell anybody. So he lent me the money, and a couple weeks later, the cash comes rolling in again, and so I paid him back. But I don't know, that's the kind of person Steve is. I think we all realize that he does a lot of things for a lot of people, and we don't even know the half of it. And because he never says anything to anybody about it. So, that's something. And the other thing, I hate to give advice, but the advice I'm going to give is based on what Scott, Douglas, and McConnico are all like, and they all treat staff like gold. They all treat staff with total and complete respect. All three of them do. And with Steve, I go around and I talk to the secretaries and the paralegals quite a bit. And, when the pressure drops, it really drops hard on secretaries, and it really drops hard on paralegals. And it's just, they're down there grinding in the dirt of the deadline. I mean, they're the ones who get hit the hardest. And every once in a while they complain about a treatment from the other side or by an attorney here, even not often, but unsolicited, every one of them would always say, boy, Steve McConnico treated us so well. He was always making sure we were taken care of. When it came time to order food, he always made sure that we got food. He made sure that we were taken care of. And every one of them said that. And he didn't have to solicit it from them, but they all said it. Wally was like that. Frank was like that. And I think we're all like that too. I mean, what we all have in common is we're all smart. I mean, I sit at my desk sometimes and I just think within 100 feet of me are 10 people who are just as smart as I am, and probably smarter. That's pretty amazing. You think about that, how smart we all are. But we're not just that. I think we're also generous and we're also humble. The root of humble is humor. Same root word, humor. And everybody in here's got a good sense of humor. We all can laugh at ourselves. And so let's just keep that going, boys. So, draw your own conclusions. My conclusion is the state of the firm is good. It is kind of an ugly ass shirt. That's why I haven't worn it. That's why I still have it.
I was super impressed that you remembered what brand it was until you announced that it's because I'm wearing it. Thank you, Steve. Financial report. Bobby? Yeah. Need some water. Selby kind of stole my thunder, so I got some bad news. I hope y'all write checkbooks today. Steve, you got it. No, we're having a really good year. I'm going to be brief. Big picture hourly work, we're doing really well with that. We've got the contingency thing that they're working on, especially that Kentucky case working in the background. So hopefully that'll kick in at some point. We need